Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today, I'm gonna hear my thoughts on Taika Waititi's point on the Thor movies. You know, he said he only did them for the paycheck, and I personally am under the impression that it definitely shows, especially when you look at the fourth movie. Taika Waititi brought a lot of really interesting ideas to the franchise that probably helped elevate, reinvigorate the character. Especially going into Infinity War and Endgame, I believe. I also think he did a lot of bad things for the character. He undersold the threat of Gore the God Butcher. He made Thor look like a goofy jock from like an 80s movie. And so I think it's interesting that he said he only did these movies for a paycheck. And I think it shows. I really think it shows. Taika Waititi is in no small regard. Like he's a talented director. He's done some pretty good things. But the fact that he said, no, I was poor and I needed money. That's the only reason I did these movies. Again, it shows. And it shows heavy because he undersells the characters. He was going for the check marks, I think, and he kind of degraded the character, and it's um, it's a bummer. It's a bummer to hear him say that, but I'm not surprised. He even said that he didn't read the comic books or even read any Thor material. And again, it shows Marvel was desperate to get this character revitalized, to get this character interesting again. So they gave it to a guy who, did that. He made him interesting, in Thor Ragnarok, and then Thor: Love and Thunder. You just let him have too much creative freedom, and again, he kind of ruined the character. I mean, there's loads of things that had he read the comics, had he shown a real interest in the source material, he could have made the third Thor movie really good, really interesting stuff. I still think that the first Thor movie is probably the best Thor movie. That's me personally. I'm kind of biased to it just because of what I associate it with. But I think it's a good movie. I think Thor: The Dark World gets too much hate, respectfully. I don't think it's all that bad as everybody kind of wants to say that it is. There's definitely some bad things with it, but it's not as bad as some people would have you believe. It's not. It's not as good as the first. It's depending on who you listen to or what you think. It's not as good as the third, and it's definitely better than the fourth. Like I've said before, I like the fourth Thor movie. I'm in a very, very small minority, but I do think that it was not as good as it could have been. It's definitely um, there's elements in there that are good. You've got great characters, you got great stories that you're borrowing from, but do not you don't do anything with it. They don't do anything spectacular. They don't do anything grandiose. They just kind of shaft the characters. They shortchange the characters. They bastardize the characters. And he's not a fan of the source material. And I mean, if you're going to do Thor Ragnarok, when they announced that, I was really interested and excited to see what they were going to do because, again, me, a fan of the comic books, I know how big and overarching and epic that was in the comics. To have Thor lose everything, to have him seemingly die, to have everything seemingly come to an end for the Thor comics. It was right out on the heels of Avengers Disassembled, right after Civil War, or leading up to Civil War, because then you had Civil War, then you had the Fallout, then you had the '07 run of Thor, which was, again, fantastic stuff, and you could have borrowed elements from the '07 run of Thor and the Ragnarok storyline and blended it into a really good Thor Ragnarok movie that would have worked out and could have led right into Infinity War, similar, if not this, well, very similarly, not the same. I mean, you could have had Hela, Surtur, and Thanos even team up to take on Asgardians and to put Asgard on the outskirts, because that's one of the last things Odin specifically is what is holding up Thanos from being able to do what he wants to do. Something like retooling, something kind of like that. You could have made work a lot better, but instead, we got the Ragnarok everybody knows and loves apparently, and then you got Love and Thunder, which not not very many people like. Everybody knows, but nobody really likes. Again, I mean, I've got the poster of it, and I like the poster art for most of it. I think it looks good. A lot of that movie falls flat, in my opinion. And then I feel the same way about Ragnarok. I don't like the way how Thor acts with Hulk in that movie, when they're in the big arena and they're having their big fight. And I think a lot of that, because of the CGI mainly, it looks very messy. It looks very cartoony, and I don't like that. And I feel like it's another thing with Marvel as well. They get too CGI heavy, and everything looks super cartoony and super unrealistic, and you can kind of see where the human element ends and the computer element begins, and it just doesn't look good. It doesn't blend, in my opinion, as well as it could. That's why I'm a big fan of practical effects. It's a whole different thing, and practical effects can look bad, but people people will tolerate kind of bad practical effects a lot better than they will tolerate bad CGI, I think. Because there's you rewatch some of the old '90s Godzilla movies, some of those practical effects look goofy, but it doesn't really take you out of the movie. It does take you out of the movie. Axel's head in Thor: Love and Thunder floating there looking awkward. That takes you right out of the movie. Or the bad CGI in Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania. Marvel just needs to get their act together on this. What they need to do is get rid of that whole initiative of not hiring fans of their properties and hire fans of the properties to then reestablish and reinvigorate what they had. Because despite what you might feel about Joss Whedon, the guy loved the comic books. He loved the source material. And so he was happy and excited to work on it. You just had a guy who didn't have the mental fortitude, I guess, to kind of really push anything forward. Having somebody that's not a fan, or at least somebody who doesn't really want to read the source material, like James Gunn told John Cena with Peacekeeper, like, or Peacemaker. He told him not to read the source material. And it's like, even if you're taking the character in a different direction, why not have him the read the source material, so where he can kind of understand the character he's going to be portraying a little easier. And I feel like these kinds of things just, they hinder the comic book industry as a whole. And then you get new writers coming into the comic book industry that then try to make them resemble more of their movie or TV show counterpart, which isn't why I like a character. So these are the issues